Washington to Moscow, New York to Paris, Rome to Jerusalem. The prophecies of the Bible are being fulfilled. Stand by for J.R. Church and today's Prophecy in the News.
On December 31st, 1992, 1,000 bonfires were lit all across Europe, from Greece to Great Britain. It celebrated the birth of a new Europe, a united Europe. And Europe definitely is united. You can spend your money anywhere now. It's one single currency, and Gary Stearman is here to discuss with me the new united Europe and the beacon ceremonies of New Year's Eve.
As a matter of fact, we're going to be discussing something called Beacon Europe a little bit later in this broadcast, and you're going to be amazed. But right now, I want to show you a brand new, crisp £1 note. And we'll get this on the screen so you can see it close up. The Royal Bank of Scotland, £1 sterling. This is a brand new pound note sent to us by friends of the ministry in Edinburgh, Scotland. If you'll notice, it has the 12 stars of the European Economic Community. It also has a serial number preceded by the initials EC. Now, JR, all the currency in Europe as of January 1 of 1993 adopted the European Community's serial numbering, and in one way or another, the design that we see here of the 12 stars of the European Community. It's called Single Europe, and I think it's very significant.
You know, instead of calling it the United States of Europe, which would be too much like the United States of America, they came up with their own name, Single Europe.
Yeah.
This is the magazine addition to the European, the weekly newspaper for Europe, and it's titled here, Beacon Europe, your guide to the dramatic celebrations of European unity and the single market, New Year's Eve, 1992. And we have some footage from Satellite Video Ministries in Edinburgh, Scotland, to show you the dramatic ceremonies for lighting 1,000 points of light all across Europe. And but before we get to that, Gary,
I'd just like to mention, JR, before we do roll that tape, which is an amazing piece of tape, I think extremely historical, we want to mention the significance of the beacon in general. The idea that you'll see expressed in this tape is that on the night of December 31st, 1992, January 1st, 1993, the old world was burned up, cleansing and purifying the way for a new Europe. And this symbolic cleansing is done through the process of lighting what are called beacons or bonfires, which have a very ancient tradition in Europe, as a matter of fact. Bonfires had the tradition of spreading messages. They were used as signals on hilltops so that messages could be spread before the advent of the telegraph very quickly. They were also used, by the way, JR, as a celebratory device in pagan communities in which they would actually burn pyres and throw their old belongings into the pyres, symbolic of burning up the old and giving birth to the new. So we have that symbol in the bonfire.
yeah, this can also be seen in the story of the phoenix.
Absolutely.
The ancient mythological bird that lives for, what, 500 years? And then burns itself up and falls, but out of the ashes comes forth a new phoenix. And so Europe has been burned in the ashes of the old Europe, and the revived Roman Empire is here, a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Our president talked to our past president, George Bush, talked about a new world order. Well, that's exactly what the Europeans have now created, a new world order for Europe. And past President George Bush talked about 1,000 points of light. Well, was this just some brainy idea of some speechwriter somewhere? Sounded good? No, sir. The 1,000 points of light were a part of a plan for world government. And we had 1,000 points of light, 1,000 bonfires across Europe.
Yes, we did. Literally 1,000 points of light, or 1,000 beacons, JR. And we'll talk a little bit later after we look at this tape about the reasons why they picked the number 1,000. There are several reasons.
Yeah.
But the fact that they burned them in unison, to me, is quite interesting. There's a symbol attached to this.
The opening paragraph of the article in this magazine of the European says, "The creation of the world's largest frontier free market beckons. At midnight on New Year's Eve, the Greek Prime Minister will celebrate this historic event by lighting a flame in Athens, setting off a chain of 1,000 beacons across the community. The fires will leap 4 time zones and carry the message of European unity as far as the mid-Atlantic islands of the Azores." Fascinating, isn't it?
Indeed. Well, we are privileged, J.R., to have one such ceremony on tape as given to us by the satellite and video people in Edinburgh, Scotland. Our thanks to them. This is only one of 1,000 similar ceremonies, and it's mind-boggling when you consider it.
Yeah, let's roll the tape. This is in the church of St. Giles.
That's right, St. Giles in Edinburgh.
And they are presenting and I guess dedicating this torch that will be carried out to the ceremonies that are down Prince Street.
Prince Street Garden. Right in front of St. Giles is a street called Prince Street, and they will take this ceremonial torch out of St. Giles, march down Prince Street, and we're going to see what they do with it.
The processional begins, and the people will follow this man as he carries the torch out of the church and down the street of called Prince Street.
Yes.
To the meeting of all the people. And by the way, this is an ecumenical service of all of the churches in old Edinburgh, Scotland.
Absolutely, J.R. Heavy emphasis on ecumenism in Europe. By the way, if you'll note perhaps a little flickering in your picture, this was made with a low-light video camera using natural light. And now we're out in front of St. Giles Church and moving into Prince Street.
And, you know, Edinburgh was the site of the recent Edinburgh Conference, the incredible conference that solidified the unified money. In fact, the note that you have there, the £1 note, also commemorates that conference that was held in December of 1992.
That's right.
Working out all the bugs for the upcoming unified Europe.
Edinburgh was a very key city in working out the problems in a single European currency.
It's interesting to me that at Edinburgh is located the Rosslyn Castle and the Rosslyn Chapel, where history has it that the Holy Grail was hidden.
J.R., here we have a piper of the Royal Guard, and he is playing Amazing Grace as they bring this torch into the garden for the ceremony.
Incredible, isn't it?
As they walk into the garden, this is at or near midnight of December 31st, 1992.
And right at midnight, they're going to be lighting a huge bonfire atop the Edinburgh Castle.
They are indeed, and we have a historical event, I believe, of the first magnitude. Let's listen to the gentleman. He's about to make an announcement.
We'd like to welcome the procession here this evening. They represent all the churches of the Old Town, and we'd like you all now to raise your own personal beacons tonight for 1 minute's silence in the hope of a united and peaceful Europe.
So he lights his personal beacon, and the audience lights its beacons. Above the audience from time to time, you'll see...
It is a great privilege for me, as Lothian convener, at this point in the development of the European community, to switch on the beacon and to signal the completion of the single market and the unity of all the peoples of Europe who seek a future built on peace and prosperity.
Up above the gathering, you can see
Together we light the beacon.
And now they have actuated a laser beam that is going to beam up from the garden up to the hilltop of Edinburgh Castle. The torch is prepared, and it will actually be touched off by a laser beam. Again, these were shot in natural light at midnight, so they're very dark. But there you can see the laser beam playing against the crescent, the torch up at the top of the mount of
And
Edinburgh
it is midnight
Castle.
now.
It's midnight.
In Edinburgh, Scotland, and the people breathlessly await the lighting of Beacon Europe.
As we said, this is but one of 1,000 similar ceremonies across Europe. Okay?
1,000 points of light. There it goes.
There it is now. It took a little while to light off, but there goes the torch.
And the people are yelling and rejoicing because Europe has now been unified.
JR, to me, I can see history in this. A great deal of history.
Yeah.
And now we are zooming back, and we're going to get a broad view. That's Edinburgh Castle up at the top of the hill. Those are laser beams that you see at the bottom of the picture.
An awesome sight, isn't it?
And down at the bottom is the bandstand, and it's playing Ode to Joy, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the closing movement, and you'll notice the caption on your picture, EC Anthem.
This is the new anthem.
The new anthem of And it's incredible to me that they chose Beethoven's Ode to Joy as their EC anthem, because that is a humanist credo, if ever there was one. But there it is. You can hear it for yourself. As the torch blazes above on the hilltop, we're going to see a true phenomenon in just a moment, JR. And we can preface this by noting that all the way through the celebration, all the way from the Economic Summit on December 12th, all the way through December 31st, we saw various pagan symbols erected in Edinburgh. And I believe one of the most pagan of all is about to be displayed here on the screen in front of us.
Yes. And this was a symbol of the conference held in Edinburgh back in December.
Yes.
Up and down Prince Street were neon pyramids.
That's right.
Pyramids with the light atop them.
There were 12 of them.
The same symbol that we have for the United States Great Seal.
And now we are seeing the Edinburgh beacon shining, and those little stripes of light you're seeing are laser beams. But JR, what's fascinating to me is the shape formed by the laser beams. As we zoom back and get a broad view of this whole proceeding,
here it comes back.
What to our wondering eyes should appear but a shape that looks very familiar to us.
Incredible, isn't it?
And we'll see it in just a moment.
The pyramid with the fire right at the apex.
That's right. We have two laser beams crossed, and it may be a bit difficult for you to see, but right at the apex of that pyramid, you'll see that beacon Europe.
Yes.
And there we have a pyramid, and the crowd is singing Auld Lang Syne. And, quite a historic occasion.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yes, it is. The view of the band shell there and the closing ceremony. And once again, I hope you can make out the two laser beams with the torch at the top. And that forms a pyramid shape. It's truly significant, J.R.
I would have to say, Gary, that it is the product of and the plan of the Illuminati, which goes back 200 years. Here, of course, is the sign Into Europe 1993 and beyond.
Wow.
What hopes the people of Europe have. And out of this will arise, I think, a world currency and a world government eventually, as these people continue with their plans for a single world, a new world order. And I think out of that will arise the Antichrist, for Bible prophecy says that such a thing will happen. First begins in Europe and then takes over the whole world.
Well, JR, the 1,000 points of light are truly, truly amazing. You know, points of light are very, very much an illuminist or occultic doctrine. We have here a quote written in the July-August 1986 Lucis Trust Beacon Journal.
Isn't it interesting? Yeah. Lucis Trust used to be called the Lucifer Publishing Company.
Yes.
And the name Lucifer means light bearer, right. And the name of their publication is Beacon.
Beacon. Journal. How amazing.
Incredible.
This quote says, "The light shared by and belonging to all, though dimmed by the imperfection of evolving forms, is the mutual recognition of many points and their joining in interrelationship, which has created the magnetic aura of the new group of world servers. Through all who identify with this group, seeking to cooperate with its purpose and blending their little points of light, the new group of world servers will fulfill its purpose and become the planetary light bearer of the Aquarian age, the radiant torch to light the way for a needy humanity." End quote. This is occultic stuff, but J.R., yeah. Though it saddens me to say it, I believe it's just what we've seen on the videotape that we were in.
That's right. In this magazine by the European, the weekly newspaper for Europe, the page here talking about Greece says it calls Greece the cradle of Europe's civilization. It is said that the tradition of beacons started in Greece together with democracy and the best of the community's culture. The first light of these beacons was lit at the Acropolis in Athens, Greece. Can you imagine such a thing? Greek mythology, and out of Greek mythology came European culture, they are saying here. You can't, the cradle of European civilization.
You can't get any more pagan than this.
Yeah.
A moment ago I raised a question, and I know I want to go back to what you're looking at in a moment, but the question can be raised, why 1,000 points of light? Why not 4,000 or 500?
950.
Right. Well, Tex Mars, in his book Dark Majesty, has written some interesting things for us to digest here. By the way, Tex is an expert on the New Age movement and occultism in general, and he writes that the number 1,000 is the astrological sign of Aquarius, or the age of Aquarius, connected with the New World Order and what's called the New Millennium, which is a kind of a mockery of God's true millennial reign on earth in the person of Jesus Christ. Also, it refers, he says, to the serpent or Lucifer. The Hindu version is called Sesha, and he is a 1,000-headed serpent of eternity who cyclically brings man to a new age over and over again, sort of a serpent who holds his tail in his mouth, you know, and he goes around in circles every 1,000 years. And so 1,000 is symbolic of a world change, if you will. Also, we have a pagan festival of St. John, so-called, the Celtic Festival of St. John, which is really a pagan festival. And this has been said about it. Towards the evening, one fire is gradually followed by 2, then 3, then 4. Finally, 1,000 gleam out from the hilltops till the whole country glows under the conflagration. Now, this is an ancient Celtic festival, the 1,000 points of light. And to the Celts, it symbolized a change of dimension, or a change into from an old world into a new world. So I think this gives us a little insight into what's going on.
Thoroughly pagan, and a part of the New Age movement.
Yes.
And it's interesting to me that 2 Corinthians gives us, I think, the idea, the concept here of what's going on. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11, beginning in verse 13, Paul writes, "For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ." Now, you know, the Antichrist is going to call himself Christ, so there's going to be hymns like Amazing Grace and other things that will accompany this new world order. He goes on to say in verse 14, "And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness." This is what the Apostle Paul says about Satan and his ministers, that they can actually appear to be ministers of Christ, and everything looks so good, and talk a good game, you know, but their purpose is darkness. He is not an angel of light. He is the prince of darkness, Lucifer.
JR, you know, the videotape that we watched a minute ago started in a church. It began, say, 10:30, 11 o'clock in the evening.
By a group of naive people.
Yeah, I would say very naive. They sang Christian hymns. They read scriptural passages. They held what they called an ecumenical service at St. Giles Church in Edinburgh, Scotland, in which every denomination was invited to participate and then march down Prince's Street to the garden and there to light off the beacon. Well, this is a combining of the things of God with the things of this world, and it really reminds me of what you just read from 2 Corinthians.
And you know, the ceremonies that took place in Europe are actually a reflection back to the Dark Ages of Europe. We have stories like, or cliches through history like the Dark Ages and the darkest Africa, and this has nothing to do with the dark skin of the people in Africa. What it has to do is the light of the gospel is extinguished or is not shining.
That's right.
I think this is what caused the Europe during the Dark Ages to be so uncivilized and so pagan.
You know, there's a new dark age overtaking the world right now. Not dark in terms of dimness or light intensity, but dark in terms of spirit. The Spirit of God seems to be extinguishing rapidly.
Even historians, recent historians, have called the last century the darkling plain. And this century they call the midnight hour.
JR, we have in 1 Thessalonians 5:4, and there's so much here that I'd like to read, but I'll limit it to a verse or two. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. You're all the children of light, the children of day. We are not of night nor of darkness. Paul here is prophesying, if you will, that in the latter day there would come a time of darkness just prior to the day of the Lord. And he said, don't worry. You're not children of the night, you're children of the day. So when you see things beginning to get dark, you know, look up, to use your favorite phrase.
Yes.
So I think this is very encouraging.
On one page here, it talks about Germany, Beethoven, Bismarck, now the Bundesbank. It says, with its illustrious cultural past, Germany has always influenced its neighbors. Today, it is the powerhouse of the European economy. The Bundesbank. You know, the German mark was devastated back after World War II.
That's right.
Today the Bundesbank has put Germany on the map. It is the most powerful economic power bloc in Europe today.
By the way, JR, that mark is going to help support this pound note in Scotland. Because now they're all members of the same marketing community. There are no more trade barriers. There are no tax barriers. Money can flow between those boundaries, but the stipulation is, you know where the power is coming from. It's coming out of Germany.
Unified Europe. You've seen it. It is alive and well. And one of these days, I think the Antichrist will emerge from this, shall we say, inglorious occasion. We'll be back in just a moment.
In today's Middle East, events change daily. In this turmoil, global finance and politics play a major but confusing role. To help you understand today's news from a prophetic perspective, J.R. Church publishes a monthly newspaper. You'll enjoy his latest research in Bible prophecy. Order an introductory subscription today absolutely free just by calling 1-800-475-1111. When the operator answers, just say that you'd like to receive an introductory subscription to Prophecy in the News. We'll mail you the next 6 issues free with our compliments. Call toll-free 1-800-475-1111 or write to Prophecy in the News, Post Office Box 7000, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73153. Prophecy in the News wants you to stay informed, so call or write today. Again, that address is Prophecy in the News, Post Office Box 7000, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73153.
A unified Europe. Absolutely incredible, but it is real. The revived Roman Empire has finally come to pass. Humpty Dumpty has been put back together again. And in this magazine put out by the European weekly newspaper for Europe, John Major, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, or now that is called the United Kingdom, has this statement, I quote, "My hope is that the beacons will light the way to an era of confidence and friendship in Europe." Helmut Kohl, Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, said, quote, "We shall have laid the foundation stone for a new and decisive stage in the process of unification." And on we have the statements of all 12 of the leaders of the European Economic Community making their glowing statements about Beacon Europe.
J.R., truly, man is uniting, but not under the banner of the gospel.
Yes.
It's a different gospel. It's the humanist gospel. Just to give you some idea of the nature and extent of paganism in Europe, I have here the September 3rd, 1992 edition of the European. There is something called a bread man on the front cover. We'll get this on the screen so you can see a man holding loaves of bread. He's standing below an electrical tower which has been swathed in plastic sheeting. Now, this has created the skeleton of a man, and they're going to fill this skeleton up with 20,000 loaves of bread. Why?
A giant bread man.
A giant bread man.
What for?
Well, a group of Dutch citizens have come up with a bizarre way of demonstrating their respect for the environment. In fact, the man behind the idea, his name is Kees Baker, and I'm quoting him right now. He said, "We wanted to demonstrate the unique relationship we Dutch have with the sea and give something back in exchange for all it has given us." End quote. His plan, J.R., to tow the bread man out to sea on a barge and then to dump it over as a sacrifice to the waters of the ocean.
To the god of the waters?
To the waters.
This is paganism,
This
Gary.
is rank paganism, appeasing a nature spirit, or thanking a nature spirit for bounty instead of thanking God. We have seen a 100% turnaround in the European thought patterns. From the days of the Reformation until the present day, it's been a terrible decline.
Lucifer is on the rampage, isn't he?
Oh, boy.
We have paganism, we have Luciferian worship. The European unity is moving right down the line for the Antichrist to rise to power and bring the world down into the darkness of the tribulation period. How soon it will happen, we don't know exactly when, but the timetable given by the leaders of Europe is by the year 2000 they will have a world government and a world economy, a one world currency. They are working now on the name of the new European currency, and even though we have bills such as this £1 note from Scotland, this is only one of the steps toward a unified currency. And one of these days, instead of calling it the ECU, they're going to lock onto a name for their one currency. And I suppose you can spend this £1 note on the same item in any of the countries, and you don't have to worry about inflation in one place or something being more expensive in one place than it is in another. Well, there you have it. Unified Europe. This is J.R. Church and Gary Stearman. Until next time, keep looking up.